Good morning or happy noon, bullfrogs. This is Mrs. Betterton. I'm going to wait just a minute and see if anybody jumps on here. Today, remember, we're going to be reading Danger in the Darkest Hour. And I was just reading, this book was actually dedicated to her father. It says, in memory of my father, Colonel William P. Pope. So her father fought in the World War II. That's kind of cool. So I think obviously it would be neat to see um, what she learned maybe from talking to her father. All right, looks like there's one on here so far. I know several of y'all are on vacation, so you'll be able to look back and watch this later. But okay, so Magic Treehouse books. I was just gonna say, these are awesome books. I know a lot of first graders start reading them, and then second graders love them. And if you have not ever read Magic Treehouse books, I'm gonna read the prologue. Okay, this is the beginning that kind of just gives the backstory and explains, reminds people what the Magic Treehouse is all about. So I'm gonna read the prologue to start off. Okay. One summer day in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, a mysterious treehouse appeared in the woods. It was filled with books. A boy named Jack and his sister Annie found the treehouse and soon discovered that it was magic. They could go to any time and any place in history just by pointing to a picture in one of the books. While they were gone, no time at all had passed back in Frog Creek. Jack and Annie eventually found out that the treehouse belonged to Morgan Le Fay, a magical librarian from the legendary realm of Camelot. They have since traveled on many adventures in the Magic Treehouse and completed many missions for both Morgan Le Fay and her friend Merlin, the magician. Teddy and Kathleen, two young enchanters from Camelot, have sometimes helped Jack and Annie in both big and small ways. Now, Jack and Annie are about to receive an unexpected call for help. And there's the dot, dot, dot. So we know that means something's to come. All right, so Jack and Annie have the magic treehouse, and the way they get to the place is they point to the picture in the book. Wouldn't that be so cool to be able to do that? Man, that would be awesome. All right, so we are going to start today. We're going to read a couple of chapters, and the first chapter is called Commando. Jack! Annie shouted from the front yard. Jack looked up from his book. Tired from a soccer game, he was lying on his bed, reading about volcanoes on Mars. Late afternoon shadows stretched across his room. Jack! Jack! Jack stood up and crossed to the window. Annie was standing by her bike. A towel was draped around her neck. Her hair was wet from swimming in the lake. She was looking up at the sky as if she was searching for something. What do you want? Jack called through the screen. Come down, she called. Help me look. Look for what? Said Jack. Just come, you won't believe it, said Annie. Jack sighed. He marked his place in his book and went downstairs to the front porch. This better be good, he said. I was in the middle of a book. Annie was still looking up at the sky. Where did he go? She said. Where did who go? Said Jack. Annie didn't answer. She walked to the edge of the yard and kept looking. Oh, darn, I don't see him. See who? Said Jack. What are you talking about? The pigeon, said Annie. Jack stared at Annie for a moment. Seriously? He said. You're looking for a pigeon? Yes. You called me away from my book to see a pigeon? Said Jack. Yes, help me find him, Annie said. Jack rolled his eyes and stepped into the yard. He looked up at the hazy sky. He was following me. He swooped down near my head, said Annie, still looking in every direction. I don't see him now. Where could he have gone? What's the big deal? Said Jack. We see pigeons every day. Not like this one, said Annie. When I was getting on my bike at the lake, I heard a loud cooing. I looked up, and he was sitting on a branch, and he looked straight into my eyes. He was super intelligent, I could tell. Are you sure you weren't out in the sun too long? Asked Jack. I'm serious, said Annie. He had these intense staring eyes. I talked to him. Like I said, hi, and then he took off. I thought, okay, so much for that. But then I started riding home and he flew in front of me right across my path. How do you know it was the same pigeon? Asked Jack. I just know. He circled above me all the way home, said Annie. He even swooped down a couple more times, but I don't see him now. I don't see him at all. Her voice trailed off as she looked up at the sky and around the yard. Well, that's enough pigeon hunting for me, said Jack. I'm heading back to my book. He turned to go inside. Ah, I see him, I see him, Annie whispered. Jack stopped. Where? There, Annie pointed to a plump pigeon perched on a bird feeder that was hanging from a maple tree. Excuse me. She stepped toward him. The pigeon didn't move. She stepped closer and closer. The bird still didn't move. Oh, wow, Jack, you won't believe this. I didn't see it until now. What? See what? Said Jack. Oh, wow, Annie whispered. Jack walked slowly towards Annie. When he reached her side, he stopped and stared at the bird, too. It was an ordinary looking pigeon, smoky gray with black stripes on his wings and iridescent green neck feathers. His amber colored eyes stared at Jack. Look at his leg, Annie whispered. Attached to one of the pigeon's spindly legs was a tiny red canister. Wow, whispered Jack. I think he's a carrier pigeon. A carrier pigeon? Asked Annie. Yeah, they carried messages to people a long time ago, said Jack. There used to be lots of them, but not anymore. Why not? Annie asked. They're not needed anymore, said Jack. Not with technology like the internet and cell phones. The pigeon made a low cooing sound. Why did he follow you? Said Jack. And where did he come from? Annie took a deep breath. I know where he came from. I just figured it out, she said. Where? Another time, said Annie. A time before the internet and cell phones. Jack's heart skipped a beat. You think? I know, said Annie. And the message is for us. She moved a step closer toward the pigeon, but the bird flapped his wings and took off from the feeder. Then he soared out of their yard and up the street, disappearing into the trees of the Creek woods. Let's go, cried Annie. Wait, I'll get my pack. Jack bolted into the house, grabbed his backpack from the hallway, and hurried outside. Jack and Annie raced up the sidewalk. They crossed the street and ran into the woods. As they weaved in and out of the dark green shadows, the late summer air smelled of sun-dried wood and fallen pine needles. Birds called lazily from the treetops. Finally, they stopped at the base of the tallest oak. Of course, said Annie. She grabbed the rope ladder that dangled from the treetop and started up. Jack followed, and they both scrambled inside the magic treehouse. Golden sunlight lit the stacks of books and the shimmering M in the floor. Of course, said Jack. A soft, cooing sound came from the window. The carrier pigeon was pacing on the windowsill. Of course, 1,000,000 times, said Annie, laughing. Don't fly away. I won't hurt you, I promise. The pigeon stopped pacing and stared at her with his amber eyes. I can take that message from you now, Annie whispered, if you don't mind. He doesn't mind, said Jack. He's a professional. Right, said Annie. The pigeon was very still as Annie reached out and gently opened the lid of the red canister attached to his leg. She pulled out a tiny scroll. Then she snapped the lid shut and unrolled the piece of paper. Annie and Jack looked at the writing together. It wasn't elegant like Merlin's or Morgan Le Fay's writing. It was the scrawl of a kid's handwriting. Jack looked at the signature. It's from Teddy, he said. Uh-oh, said Annie. What happened? Did he goof up again? I'll bet he did, said Jack. They both laughed. The apprentice sorcerer from Camelot often made them laugh. Sometimes he made big mistakes when he tried to do magic. Many of the mistakes were funny, but a few had been terrible. Annie read the letter aloud. Dear Jack and Annie, I sent Commando to find you. Commando? Jack interrupted. That's a funny name for a Camelot pigeon. Yeah, it sounds like a tough army guy, Annie said. She kept reading. Kathleen and I are working with the forces of good in one of the darkest hours of history, and we need your help. Please come to Glastonbury, England, right now. Your friend, Teddy. I can't wait to see Teddy and Kathleen, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. He was especially excited to see Kathleen, a brilliant and beautiful young enchantress from Camelot. But what does Teddy mean? One of the darkest but what does Teddy mean? One of the darkest hours of history. Annie shrugged. The pigeon made a low cooing sound. Commando wants us to hurry, said Annie. Okay, let's go, Jack said. He took another deep breath and pointed to the words Glastonbury, England, on a tiny piece of paper. I wish we could go there. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. And everything was still. Absolutely still. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. That pigeon is trying to get them to come back to a time where there was, it says, the darkest time in history, which, if you remember, the title of the book is Darkest in the Dark, or Danger in the Darkest Hour. So I wonder what that pigeon could be wanting them to do. Let's find out. We're going to start with chapter 2 called Top Secret. I'm going to see real quick. I think I see still just one friend. I don't know who that might be. Let me see if I can. Okay. So, if you get on here and I'm in the middle of reading, remember I'm going to video this and post it. But if you get on here, tell me that you're here. Let me know. Looks like one person, Angel Cat. All right, well, I'm glad you're here because it's just you and me right now. So hopefully we'll have more people join us. I know some people, again, are on vacation. Maybe they're eating lunch. Maybe this isn't a good time. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. So we're going to read chapter 2 now. It's called Top Secret. And I hope you're reading along, but if not, you can just listen. Let's find out what this pigeon is wanting them to do to help. Commando cooed as if saying goodbye. Then he flapped his wings and flew out the treehouse. He disappeared into the misty gray twilight. Thanks, Commando, Annie called after him. Well, I guess we're here, said Jack, shivering in the chilly air. But our clothes didn't change. I wonder why. The treehouse had landed in the branches of a tall maple tree. Through the haze, Jack and Annie could see ducks floating on a pond and sheep grazing in a meadow bordered by hedgerows. Beyond the hedges were broken down buildings, stone pillars, and crumbling archways. There was no sign of people. It looks ancient, said Annie. It's Glastonbury. Or is Glastonbury part of Camelot? I don't know, said Jack. This looks sort of like Camelot, said Annie. Yeah, the ruins of Camelot, said Jack. Teddy, Kathleen, Annie called. There was no answer. Let's go look for them, said Jack. Jack grabbed his backpack. He and Annie climbed down the rope ladder. They stepped onto the wet grass and started across the meadow. Rounding a hedge, they came upon the remains of what had once been a huge church. The roofless building had tall, ivy-covered walls and grand arches made of stone blocks. Cheerio, friends! A teenage boy strode through one of the arches. The boy wore an old-fashioned flight suit, gloves, and a tight-fitting leather helmet. He carried a khaki duffel bag. Teddy! Cried Annie. She and Jack hurried to the young enchanter of Camelot. Teddy put down his bag, and they all hugged. I am glad Commando found you, said Teddy. He is quite a smashing soldier, you know. Who? Whoops. Sorry. see, there's somebody else that's joined. Just tell me that you're here and tell me what your name is when you join. I'd love to say hey to you. All right. So they found Teddy. I'm glad Commando found you, said Teddy. He is quite a smashing soldier, you know. Who? The pigeon? Said Annie. Yes, Commando is a member of the National Pigeon Service, said Teddy. Jack and Annie giggled. You're kidding, right? Said Jack. Not at all, said Teddy. Pigeon breeders have given over 200,000 pigeons to the British military to carry messages throughout Europe. Commando has been on dozens of missions. The missions were all in this time, of course. He needed a treehouse to take him to your time. So what is this time? Asked Jack. It is June 4th, 1944, said Teddy, and you have landed in Glastonbury, England. It is the site of one of the great monasteries of Europe. So here's a picture. It says, Teddy put down his bag and they all hugged. You see how he's dressed? There's the setting. We're in England. Back in June. It said June 1944. Okay, so let's keep reading. You can still see an ancient tower on the sacred hill of Glastonbury Tor. He pointed to a conical hill overlooking the flat countryside. Eventually, all the sacred buildings fell into ruin, but legends of King Arthur still surround this area. For that reason, I thought it might be a good place to meet you, a living midpoint between our worlds. Where's Kathleen? Asked Annie, looking around. We thought she would be with you. Well, that is why I called for you, said Teddy. But first, how much do you know about World War II? Jack gasped. Did we come to the time of World War II? I'm afraid you have. The war has been going on for almost 5 years, said Teddy. Oh, man, said Jack. So you know about World War II, said Teddy. Some, said Jack. I know that America fought Germany and Italy and Japan, and a man named Adolf Hitler was the leader of Germany, and his political party was called the Nazis. And we also know that 3 of our great-grandfathers fought in World War II, said Annie. So Jack and Annie's, it says 3 of our great-grandfathers fought in World War II. That's interesting. The people of England are grateful for all the help that Americans are giving them fighting this war, said Teddy. At this point, Nazis have taken over most of Europe. They have killed countless innocent civilians, including millions of Jewish people. That's terrible, said Annie. Really terrible, said Jack. But what does this war have to do with you and Kathleen? When Merlin looked into the future, he saw this frightful time, said Teddy. He saw how important it was to bring hope to British leaders. So he sent Kathleen and me to London. The leaders actually met with you? Asked Jack. Teddy smiled. Indeed they did, he said. Kathleen used a bit of magic to make us both appear older than we are. We were quite brilliant, wearing the right disguises and using the right manners and speech. We seem to have inspired everyone, including the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. Really? Said Jack. Oh, yes, said Teddy. In fact, Winston inducted Kathleen and me into the SOE. What's that? Asked Annie. SOE stands for Special Operations Executive, said Teddy. It is a top secret organization that Winston formed. It conducts undercover missions in countries occupied by the Nazis. In the short time since Kathleen and I completed the required training, we have both been sent on many secret assignments. Is Kathleen away on an assignment now? Asked Annie. Yes, Kathleen left for a mission in France more than 3 weeks ago, and now... Teddy stopped. And now what? Asked Jack. Now it seems she has disappeared, said Teddy. Oh no, what happened to her? Asked Annie. I do not know, said Teddy. What was her mission? Asked Jack. I do not know that either. She cannot tell me, said Teddy. Secret agents must keep their missions secret, even from each other. All I know is that 2 weeks ago, I was asked to fly behind enemy lines to a location in Normandy, France, to pick her up. Fly behind enemy lines, said Jack. Yes, I've done that many times, said Teddy. But when I arrived at the meeting place, she was not waiting for me. I was frantic, and then yesterday I received a message from her, delivered by a French carrier pigeon. So, is she okay? Asked Annie. Well, at least I know she is alive, said Teddy. The problem is she wrote her message in a code in case it fell into enemy hands, but I have had no success trying to make sense of certain parts of it. He pulled a small piece of paper from his pocket and read Kathleen's message aloud. Here's what the message says: Come to me in the darkest time, a wand I need, a magic rhyme. 3 miles east of Sir Kay's grave, cross a river to find a cave. Look for knights and small round cows, a crack in a rock beneath the boughs. Wonder what that means. Teddy sighed. You see, you see why I cannot share this with anyone in the SOE? He said. Even if they could decipher the code, others would not understand her request for the wand and magic rhyme. But why does she need them? Asked Jack. Her magic is amazing. Remember when she turned us all into seals? Yes, but these are very, very dark times, said Teddy. I am not surprised that she may need extra magic. I have found my own powers very limited. That is why I sent for you. Just 1 second, I gotta get a drink. Okay. So, do you have something we can take to Kathleen? Asked Jack. Oh, yes, said Teddy. I have the wand of Dianthus and the rhyme to unlock its magic. Great, said Annie. The next 2 lines of her message, I do understand, said Teddy. He read on. 3 miles east of Sir Kay's grave, cross a river to find a cave. The secret burial places of Arthur's knights are revealed in one of Merlin's books, said Annie. Kathleen knew I would know that the burial place for Sir Kay is Caen, a town in Normandy, France. Wait, I better write this down, said Jack. He pulled his notebook and pencil out of his backpack. Spell that, please. Kaen, said Teddy. Jack wrote the town's name in his notebook. So we can go to Caen, said Annie. We travel 3 miles east, cross a river, and look for a cave. Yes, said Teddy, but I cannot imagine what the next 2 lines could mean. He read from the note. Look for knights and small round cows, a crack in a rock beneath the boughs. Teddy looked up. Do you understand this? Not really, said Jack. There weren't any knights fighting in World War II. Indeed not, said Teddy. And small round cows? A crack in a rock? Boughs? What does all that mean? He folded the note and handed it to Annie. Well, I trust you to figure this out. I know you are expert decoders. You're kidding, said Jack. Us? Of course, said Teddy. When Kathleen and I went with you to New York City, you figured out the secret poem to free the unicorn from the museum tapestry, remember? And Morgan's missions for you were often written as riddles. Yes, but, started Jack. We have to find Kathleen, said Teddy. I cannot lose her. So many people have been lost in this war. It's really the darkest time. Truly a terrible time. It's okay, Teddy, Annie said. We'll help you. Of course we will, said Jack. We'll do our best. Teddy took a deep breath and smiled. Thank you, my friends, he said. I am most grateful and sorry that I cannot be with you in France. You're not coming with us? Jack asked. No, tonight the SOE is sending me on an urgent mission to rescue downed airmen in Holland and Belgium, said Teddy. I must do so before daylight. Wow, said Annie. It is the sort of thing the SOE does every day, said Teddy. Then he clapped his hands together. All right, let us roll up our sleeves and get moving. It is time you put on your parachutes. Parachutes, said Jack. Yes, said Teddy. You cannot jump from a plane without parachutes. He picked up his duffel bag and strode off. Wait, did he say we're going to jump from a plane? Jack asked Annie. He did, said Annie. But don't worry, he said. He'd give us some magic. She hurried after Teddy. I know, but, began Jack. Come along, Jack, Teddy called to him. The moon is rising over Glastonbury Tor. All right, that's the end of chapter 2. Remember how, if you've read the other Magic Tree House books, Jack is kind of a coward. And Annie is usually the one that's like already in it, going, and he's like, oh gosh, okay, trying to keep up, right? So, jumping out of an airplane, can y'all see Jack doing that? I just had a friend, a teacher friend, Mrs. Whitfield, some of y'all know. And remember that I talked about, she just jumped out of a plane, and she talked about how terrifying that is. So I can't even imagine Jack actually doing that, especially not at nighttime. Oh my word. You wouldn't be able to see where you're going. Okay, well, that's all we're going to read for today. Chapter 3 will start the next time. It's called Spy Taxi. Spy Taxi. And see, today is Friday, so probably I actually start a training on Monday. So let's say about 4:30 on Monday. We'll start reading with chapter 3. I'll do a live video again, and hopefully you can join me on Monday at 4:30. Set your timer. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure and subscribe. And then there's a little bell. If you push the bell, it dings and alerts you of when I am going to be coming on. And sometimes I won't be able to do a live. I'll just have to record it and read it, and you can read it on your own time. But I'm so glad. It looks like 2 friends joined me today. And I'm so glad that you read with me today. Again, we are going to be reading chapter 3, Spy Taxi, on Monday, 4:30. I'm going to do a live video and let you join me. And if you don't have the book yet, maybe that gives you a little bit of time to go get the book. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed the first 2 chapters of Danger in the Darkest Hour with Jack and Annie. And I can't wait to